Hello, Imogen here again with my guest Shay Seaborne, and we're continuing our conversations about all things uh, stress, trauma, neurobiology, body intelligence. And today we're going to talk about the stress of giving and receiving gifts. And obviously, this is coming up because of the holidays, which are kind of upon us now. Um, but before we get into our conversation, I want to invite you to do a small experiment, little thought experiment around the idea of giving and receiving gifts. So, Shay, you can do this a lot, this too. So, if you just close your eyes now and imagine receiving a gift, or you might even remember receiving a gift, but just whatever comes into your mind, and just see what you notice about that. Any physical sensations that come up, emotions, thoughts? Do you feel kind of a movement toward or away in some way? So just spending a few moments with that. What do you notice about the idea of receiving a gift? And now let that go if you can, and close your eyes again. And this time, I want you to imagine that you're giving someone a gift. This time, you're giving the gift. What do you notice about that? Is it different from how you felt about receiving a gift? What sort of physical sensations are you experiencing, emotions, thoughts? Anything else? Are you surprised by anything that you're noticing? Just anything about it. Take a few moments, and anyone who's watching this, either live or on the replay, you feel free to write what you noticed in the comments. But Shay, maybe there's something that you noticed was the one that you preferred. That would be another, like, did you notice that you had a strong preference for giving or receiving? That could be an interesting.
Oh
Yeah.
yes, very different experiences
Mm-hmm.
with the receiving. Uh, it was like my life of gifts flashed before my eyes. Uh, a whole variety of positive and negative experiences, including one that was intentionally meant to harm me, and others that were, just like delightful surprises, or the perfect thing, or the most thoughtful thing, or whatever. So it was a real mishmash, kind of
Mm-hmm.
wild ride
Mm-hmm.
of emotions and interactions and energy dynamic. And with the giving, uh, it was all positive for me. It all felt really good. Um,
Oh, that's.
yeah, it was nice. And I realized in experiencing that I'm way more comfortable giving than receiving. And a lot of times when I receive, I'm very awkward about it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that has an effect on the energy and information flow in that moment. If somebody gives me something and I'm overwhelmed and I can't respond the way I would ideally like to, or even close to it,
Mm-hmm.
um, then the exchange isn't as whole as it could otherwise be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I know I have a tendency to believe I don't deserve things, and to, refuse gifts and so on, because there's so much uh, neurophysiological baggage attached to it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
through the harms done to me with giving. Um, and I've noticed there are times when somebody gives me something that my ability to respond is impeded by all that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a sad result. Neither one of us gets the benefit that we could otherwise get. So it's something I'm, very aware of and work on.
Mm-hmm.
It's still very present.
Um, I wasn't really doing the experiment for myself then because I was guiding it for what. But I do know in the past when I've done this, it's like many more people are more comfortable with giving than receiving
Mm-hmm.
to lesser and greater degrees, and yet that we can find ways to be uncomfortable about both. Like could be, I know that I've been anxious whether someone likes the gift that I'm giving them,
Mm-hmm.
which is not, then kind of gets all mixed up with with the potential joy of giving that gift, you know. And then of course there's those awkward moments when you open the present and you just don't like it at all. You know, even with the best intentions of the
Mm-hmm.
person giving it to you.
Yeah, giving and receiving gifts is a really complex, multi-level human experience. It can mean and do so many different things.
Yeah. So obviously this time of year, there's a huge pressure around giving and receiving and exchanging gifts. And it's actually one of the, we have a workshop coming up next Tuesday we call it Tame Your Holiday Stress. And we've identified 5 kind of broad ways in which the holidays can be stressful. You know, this could be categorized in many ways, but we've kind of done this. But one of those is the stress of exchanging gifts. Um, so why do you think this activity, which you would think in theory would be, you know, just the most kind of big, you know, an activity that brings joy to both giver and receiver and is very, you know, rewarding. Why do you think it's kind of becomes fraught with anxiety, and especially at this time of year? So
You're right. Yeah, the we're made to give and receive, and enjoy both aspects of that, and to have a sort of balance over time, in the giving and receiving. And the holidays turn up the volume on everything. It's not just the music at the store, it's everything.
Mhm.
And and because the rest of the year, most of the time, we give and receive according to, a more natural rhythm of,
Mhm.
it's somebody's birthday, or they're getting married, or you just love them and you saw this thing that you want them to have. Um, uh, but then at the holidays, there's this obligatory gift giving in a lot of traditions, and the mainstream culture is all about the gifts. Um,
Mhm.
and with that much focus on it, of course, that's going to ramp up our anxiety about it. And especially, we're bombarded with commercials about, how to give them the perfect gift, and it's got to be diamonds
Mhm.
or whatever, that maybe we
Or
can't
a car.
afford. But something that the average person isn't going to be able to afford, and so
Mhm.
we're even subconsciously held up to this standard of give, make it the most memorable Christmas, or whatever
Mhm.
it is that you're celebrating, by giving big, big, big. And some
Mm.
people go into debt for this. Uh, and so of course there's a
Yeah.
lot of stress on finding the right gift, and making sure you don't, go out of your budget, and hoping that it's reciprocal enough, and that they like it. And we're doing that for a lot of people. Not, it's Mother's Day. I mean, even that's, it's a contrived holiday to make people
Mhm.
buy gifts. But at least that's, you're shopping for one or two people, probably not like
Mhm.
everybody on your list.
Mhm. Mhm.
So of course, this time of year when you have a list, that's going to be much more
Yes.
stressful.
Oh, when we were talking before, it's like I've got to knock out my list. I've got to get on
Mhm.
my, which is a kind of strange when you think about it. Let's take a step back. A strange attitude to have around giving something to
Mhm.
somebody. You know.
Yeah, it's like an obligation. Oh, I have to do this, and it's
Mhm.
almost like a reflex, rather than um uh a a careful consideration. And part of it's because you don't have time. You have to get all these gifts. If this is your agenda, you don't have
Mhm.
time to sit there and think and look and figure out what exactly is going to fit this person, that maybe, it's an aunt or whatever. Maybe you don't even know them that well. Uh,
Mhm.
that's one of the things. Years and years ago, when my kids were little, I found a book called Unplug the Christmas Machine, and it was such a
Mhm.
huge help. And downsizing the whole gift thing was one of the biggest, longest term, and most difficult projects, because the
Mhm.
relatives didn't want to do that. I had his sister-in-law call me up and go, why don't you get this pound puppy for my kid and I'll get this pound puppy for your kid and we'll mail them to each other. I'm like, why don't you keep your money and I'll keep mine? It's
Yeah,
so
such a
ingrained in
lot of
us.
pressure, and like you say, if you change the way that you're doing things and that way is different from other members of your family or the group that you have in the past exchanged gifts with, that can also be a really tricky
Mm.
situation to negotiate. um uh, I note that you had written something about
Yeah.
reciprocity guilt. What's
Yes.
that about?
Well, again, in our culture and also our neurobiology tells us that things should balance out.
Mhm,
And in our culture, if you give me a $25 gift, I'm supposed to give you a $25 gift. That's also, picked for you appropriately according to, how I know you and your interests and all that stuff. That's a lot of pressure
mhm,
right there, especially if I don't have the $25. Um, that's one of the things I had to deal with, in unplugging the machine for my family. The relatives didn't want to hear this. So for a few years they would send the pound puppies or whatever, and I would send them nothing. And it felt really awkward. I felt a little guilty about it, but also I really felt like I needed to set this boundary. And then they finally stopped sending stuff and
mhm,
I felt okay again. And my kids learned a lot about returning things the next day at the store.
mhm. Um, yeah, so there's all sorts of financial implications,
Mhm.
and especially if you don't have the money to do what other people in your circle are doing,
Mhm.
that can feel
Yeah.
very
I've approached
challenging
that many
indeed.
times by either making gifts or giving them a certificate for something like lunch out or a trip to the museum or 3 car
Mhm.
washes or something like that. Whatever it is that I can offer them. And a lot of times people really appreciate that more than, another scarf
Yeah,
or a pair of
giving your
socks.
time.
Mhm.
Um, um, I think that's amazing. And also, if you do something that can be a homemade gift, I think people do really appreciate that because that's also you've taken the time. You didn't just order it on Amazon,
Mhm.
which isn't to say good gifts can't be gotten on Amazon
Just a
on occasion, but you know what I mean. There's a
Yeah.
difference in the attention that was,
Right, and
brought
and
to that.
and for a lot of us, that's a big part of the pleasure of giving or receiving a gift that it conveys something of ourself to the other person.
Mhm.
And you think about something that somebody's given you, and when you look at you, think of them, right? Even I
Mhm.
even if you don't really consciously think of it, your eye might land on it, and you're connecting with that person through that object
Yeah.
that they gave you in a thoughtful way.
Yeah, indeed. And I have some lovely gifts from you that do just that for me. Um, um, yeah, so another thing that I see that we noted down was the kind of this kind of power differential
Mm.
between, I guess, giver and receiver. Do you want to say more about that?
Yeah, that was one of the most interesting things for me to discover. I mean, I always intuited that, and there were times where it was obviously that. But yeah, whenever we give or receive a gift, whenever we give a gift, we're automatically in a kind of one-up position. Um,
Hmm.
this is a cultural thing for most cultures, but also um, it's a neurobiological thing. We want to have an equal relationship, and most of the time, this is another stress for the winter holidays. Most of the time, we're giving something like it's your birthday and I give you a gift. I'm not expecting you, and it's not a tradition for you to give me a gift back then at that time.
No, but I
So
might give you a birthday gift when it's
yeah,
your
but you
turn.
but you
Yeah.
probably would you probably would, like, hug me and say thank you, and that would be my
Mhm,
gift back at the time, and then
mhm.
sometime later, you might give me a membership to the museum or something. Um, and it's not, "I did this and you did this," equal, equal. It's over
Mhm,
time, the energy and information flow balances out, and it's when it can be spontaneous or, a natural occurrence rather than some kind of cultural pressure to meet a deadline, that we can really enjoy that more. But yeah, sometimes people give gifts as a way to establish their power, uh,
Mm,
especially if it's a large gift and it's something you can't reciprocate, uh, uh, a material
yeah.
item that you can't reciprocate. And it does create really a neurophysiological obligation. And of course, that can be used, in nefarious ways, uh, to, manipulate people and say, well, I did this for you, so now you owe me.
Mm.
Um,
And even if it's not, there might be something, I'm guessing, in our neurophysiology that recognizes this inequality of the exchange
mhm.
that is uncomfortable or changes the dynamic between
Yeah,
you.
and that's part of the
Yeah.
reason we have the urge to give something back. Uh,
Mm,
Also, I think most people give gifts because they want to do something nice for somebody else, but
mhm,
it's important to understand there are some people who will give a gift in order to either try to change somebody or even to harm them on purpose.
mm, mm. Um, I'm thinking of not this level of harm, but I've definitely received gifts where it felt like the person wanted me to have this because they wanted me to
Mm,
read this or do this thing, I think, rather
mhm.
than thinking about, do I, would Imogen actually like that sort of book, for
Yes.
instance? Um, you know,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah, that can be really awkward. I think that probably happens, that level of disconnect happens probably pretty often, especially around holidays where people are buying lots of gifts for lots of people and really
yeah,
don't
and
have
you
the
just,
time and energy. It really takes to carefully select a gift for somebody does really take a lot of intention. We have to be able
mhm,
to, you know, understand who they are and how they feel about things, and
yeah.
recognize what their interests are, currently, not 10 years ago. So that's a lot of consideration to put into finding something, even with the internet where you can clicky click to get it.
Mhm. I'm wondering what you think about this. I'm in a networking group, and a lot of groups, maybe at work or um, we have a holiday gift exchange. So you just buy one gift, but you don't know
Mhm.
who's going to get it. So you just have to choose something that you think maybe quite a few people in the group, because you can then it's I love it when we do it. It's a lot of fun,
Mhm.
and we can get kind of silly, and you can steal off someone else until it's
Yeah.
over and that sort of thing. But coming up with I'm in the moment at the moment where I'm come up with this sort of generally
Yeah.
nice gift. So
I
yeah.
have a suggestion. Chia
Mhm.
pets. This is why they were invented, for parties like that.
Well,
You can get one that looks like Bob Ross or a llama. I mean, one for anybody, right? Now watch,
um,
the Chia
so,
pet sales are going up, and we're gonna get ads for them on
mhm,
Facebook.
mhm. Um, so any other things about why giving or receiving gifts can be stressful? We talk about how receiving something that you don't like can make you uncomfortable. So that's kind of the receiving end.
Mhm. Yeah, well, yeah,
Or
before
actually,
we
or
cover.
receiving something that's just too over the top. Like you might like it, but it's like
Mhm,
so much out of the realm, maybe financially, of
mhm.
what you expect or what you could possibly, that it's
Yeah,
just.
that's a really
Yeah.
hard one. It
Hmm.
depends so much on, what the relationship is already established.
Mm,
Um, I've had experiences where somebody gave me a gift that was, were like more than I considered appropriate, and they were
mhm,
actually trying to manipulate me.
mhm,
So, um,
mhm.
that's something to keep in mind. It's possible. Uh, and other times I've just said thank you. Um,
Yeah.
and you really have to go with what your internal state is telling you about it. So other times I might
Mm,
go, oh no, this is just too much. This this car is just more than you should be giving me, and I'm not comfortable with that.
Noted.
Yeah, don't give me a car, okay?
I wasn't actually planning on it, but yeah.
Um, yeah, and sometimes it's important to give it back. Uh, Abusers will often give gifts as a way to try to control their
Mm,
target.
mm,
Somebody in a support group I was in years ago kept getting gifts at work. Uh, Flowers would show up, or a goldfish bowl with
mm,
goldfish or whatever would be delivered to her desk. And it,
mm.
everybody saw it, and it was very uncomfortable for her. And
Yeah.
she finally
Yeah,
had
because that's very public too.
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. And she's like, I don't know what to do with these. They're really nice, and I like them. We're like, throw them away. Give the fish to somebody else. Tell them to stop. And he finally did.
Mm,
And I mean, she finally was able to, with all that support, and
mm,
that stopped
mm,
the
mm,
he was, sexually harassing her and pressuring her to date and all that stuff. So yeah,
mm, mm.
gifts really have a lot of meaning and power in them
Yeah,
that we
yeah,
don't really
yeah.
think about, but we feel it. We feel it in our bodies.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So anything else? And then maybe importantly, before we finish up, what can we do to help take the stress out
Mhm.
of gift giving or receiving
Well,
even?
I would like to talk a little more about the positive aspects of gift giving and receiving.
Oh, good, because that will help take the stress out of it too, because
Yeah,
there are lots of
yeah.
positives.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, and when we understand a little bit of the neurobiology, we can use that
Hmm.
to our advantage and enjoy
Hmm.
things better. Um, One of the really cool things I found is a study that showed that when we give selflessly, um, it activates the pleasure part of our brain, and it also helps um, our brain and the recipient's brain sync together. And
Hmm.
that is like the state we're made to be in most of the time. And that's what our nervous systems crave, is that kind of synced up connection where we're both feeling kind of the same thing and we're attuned to
Hmm.
each other. Um,
Hmm.
and of course, this is really, neurobiologically, this is a survival adaptation. This is the real mark of civilization, is taking care of each other, doing, putting it
Yeah.
out there, doing something
Yeah.
that's giving up
None
something
of us can
for
survive
us.
on our own. And I guess this giving and receiving gets to that kind of very primitive
Hmm.
need to that
Right. And,
to
and, and so therefore, when we can exchange gifts freely without the impediments of the cultural mores of, you have to do this and it has to be equal,
Mhm,
when we can give according to what feels right to us and receive without uh, hesitation, we can really take it in. Um, it's really good for our nervous system and the other person's nervous system, and it builds bonds between us uh,
mhm,
that help when things are stressful. That helps keep us connected when and helping each other when things are stressful. So we all need that.
mhm. Uh, so that would be a good thing to remember that um, when we give in that sort of way and can create connection, that it's hugely beneficial to both parties. Let's put
Mhm.
it like that.
Yeah, for
Um,
me, that's really good incentive to tone down the holiday giving and focus more on, individuals the rest of the year, according to, how I feel inspired.
mhm. Um, so, what else can we do to prepare ourselves for that surprise gift that you just didn't want?
Well, we know it's gonna happen sooner or later, so
Mhm,
being
mhm,
prepared for that is really beneficial. Um, you can rehearse in your head, different things to say. You could probably find on YouTube, 10 ways to accept a gift that is really awkward without being
mhm,
awkward yourself, or something like that. And
mhm,
just practice it in your head or with a friend or family member. But really, I would say the number one thing is to be able to cultivate the ability to pause before you react. That way you can get your brain online uh, and make a choice about how you want to respond rather than just having your gut reaction.
Yes.
So, yeah,
And yeah,
practicing the
so
pause.
practicing the pause, which is very basically fundamental to the work that we teach and do and practice. But that would also help, I think, really with any aspect of gift exchange, down to how you choose what to give or if to give, that you can really pause and be intentional about it, and maybe take that moment to really think about the other person and what they might need or like, or so there's being able to pause and tune in and reflect and choose, just could change the whole dynamic around it. I chose many years ago to stop doing Christmas cards, holiday cards, and because it just had become a chore and I wasn't getting any enjoyment. It wasn't a point of connection. And I mean, it's not a gift, but it is an exchange, because it felt then really weird, like receiving cards from people and not sending them a card
Yes.
back,
And it takes a few years, right? Before you
Yeah.
drop off their list.
And then interestingly, this year, I've decided there are a few people I want to send a card to, because they're people I want to connect with, and this is a nice opportunity to do that, because I'm not going to connect in any other way naturally, So
that's what I do too. Just a few select people that have been very meaningful in my life, and we're not really in contact anymore, but they still mean a lot to me, and I want them to know I'm thinking of them at this time of year, and that makes it pleasurable and not overwhelming, and no tit for tat. And I think applying that concept to like everything about the holidays is really helpful, including, look at my list of people that I want to give gifts to. How much of this is obligatory and how much of it's coming from here?
Yeah, and you might pause and realize, even though this isn't coming from my heart, that there are other reasons why it's important to do it, because of, I don't know, family harmony or something like that,
Yeah, whatever
but
your
you're still
values
being
are.
intentional. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else? I realize this has ended up being one of our longer. Who knew there was so much to say about giving and receiving gifts? But anything else you want to say about the giving and receiving? Maybe anything that we forgot to mention?
No, I think we covered everything. We did good.
So, yeah. So, just before we go, we do have this workshop coming up next Tuesday, Tame Your Holiday Stress. So, we won't obviously be going to all this detail on gift giving, but we'll be more. I can just tell you the few things that we are going to do. We're going to learn about the body-mind connection and how you can use it to relieve stress during the holidays. Discover the 5 different types of holiday stress and how to reduce them that we've talked about. Understand key concepts from neuroscience in simple, practical way that supports trauma recovery and stress relief. And we'll practice simple exercises, again, based on neuroscience, that support the regulation of your nervous system and help you relieve the stresses of the holidays. So I hope you'll consider joining us for that.
I just want to say this is all stuff that's really good for any stress or trauma.
Yes, indeed.
It's actually a really good introduction to the kind of work that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. And the holidays seem to ramp up a lot of things, and Stress is one of them, but hopefully if we can tamp that down, we can get more of the enjoyment and meaning from it. All right, thank you so much, Shay.
Thank you.
One day we'll learn to do a short video, but we hope you enjoyed the conversation, and do let us know in the comments if you did the exercise at the beginning, what you noticed about yourself, giving and receiving. All right, bye, see you next time.